Hello and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. I'm your host Spencer, and today in episode 70, we're going to do something a little bit different. We almost exclusively talk about video games, except for the times we talk about NFL football. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. So I've worked in technically retail at this point for pretty much the last 15 years, all things considered. Really, most of my major jobs were in video game stores of different kinds before CIB and during CIB, 10 years of CIB. So one of my favorite things to do in my off time is read, I guess you would call it, different stories of different retail workers on websites like Reddit. There's a lot of subreddits for the different employees of different businesses. GameStop has one that it's just very enjoyable to go through. And Best Buy and Kroger. And I've read a lot of stories over the course of the years of people that have just kind of had enough with these companies that they're working for. And I empathize with that greatly because I totally get it. You know, I worked at GameStop for a number of years, although it was less bad than it is now. And I was never officially a manager or anything, so I never had that like extra stuff to it. But I can get it. And even at the store, even at Complete and Box, we have days where it's tough and it's not anyone's fault. Customers can be great that day, and it's just that there's a lot going on, a lot happening. It can be tough on the psyche. It can be tough on, make you anxious, anxiety, all that stuff. So today I kind of just want to give, I guess, some key advice to people who are in the retail landscape. That can really include anything. I'm sticking to saying this is specifically for retail because that's what I know, but a lot of this advice is kind of general that can be put towards other stuff. Obviously, food service is very similar to retail. And again, this can be put towards anything, specialized fields or, trade jobs. A lot of this stuff can be extrapolated to the different jobs. But like I said, officially, as far as I'm concerned, we're talking about retail and the associated jobs with that. So just wanted to give some just general advice because I see a lot of people on these like Reddit sites saying stuff like, I'm so worn down, I can't sleep, even there's some people that are like, I started drinking a lot, I never did it before, just any way to kind of ease the burden, I guess you would say. So let's start into these, I always do that opposite, let's start into these key advice over here, and I'll kind of explain each one as I go through, as I always do. So number one, and I think I have these pretty much in order of what I would consider most to least important. Number one is always have backup options available. You can absolutely love the place that you work, but the sad reality of it, most places, especially bigger places, may not love you back. And that's a tough pill to swallow, and it's something that we don't want to kind of even recognize, and it's like a sad thing to recognize, but especially if you work at any sort of big business, Walmart, Amazon, it doesn't even have to be ones that big. A lot of these places have been going through essentially mass, let's take GameStop as an example. They've been going through essentially mass firings of managers and people who have been tenured there for a long time, 8, 10, 12, 15 years, and really finding any reason whatsoever to let people go. There are multiple YouTube channels out there that focus pretty much just on this stuff and, getting stories from people around the retail scape. And, there are sometimes, of course, where people deserve to be fired, but there's a lot of these people are good, honest, hard workers that have pledged much time to these places and are let go for the smallest of reasons, whether it's taking an improper break, whether it's, the first time a small amount of money is I don't even want to say misplaced, like, any sort of minor thing like that you're off your till $10. Oh, okay, well, we got to get rid of them kind of thing. And then what they're doing is they're hiring in fresh legs, I guess you could say, and they don't have to pay them as much because they're not tenured with the company. You can just hire them at whatever. And obviously that's a really, really short-sighted way of doing it, because good work, you got to pay for good work. It just is what it is, I would rather have one good worker at X an hour than 3 good workers at 1/3 of X for each of them. I would rather have that one good guy. So, because of this, you really want to always have a backup available at almost any given time. I'm not trying to throw anything out there and make it like, oh, anyone can let you go for any reason whatsoever, but it's nice to kind of just scout around and see what's there, depending on, especially if you're unhappy with what you're doing there, and we'll get down to that as we continue going. So it is not a bad thing. You are not being against the company. You're not being against the people that are there. None of that stuff. If you have backups available, oh, I see blank is hiring. Oh, I'd always like to do this. Not saying that you have to go in and go for interviews and stuff like that, but just kind of have in the back of your mind, you are not, I guess even a better way of saying this is, you are not married to the place that you're working at. You may love it, but you are not married to it, because they can break their side of the marriage very easily, and because of that, you have to realize that most places it is not, it is not a two-sided marriage. In fact, it's very much a one-sided marriage, which is why you always have to kind of keep looking around there. Number 2 is, seems very obvious, but to know your worth. Essentially, if you know that you are worth more, whether it's in physical money or in how they treat you, than the place that you're working at, then it's probably not a good fit for you. And it's one of those things where on these Reddit sites, these Reddit subreddits, I'll just see so many people just like really down in the dumps, just saying stuff along the lines of, well, I know I couldn't get anything else out there. This is the best I'll ever get. This is the best I'll ever get is nothing you ever want to say to yourself. Know your worth. Know that there is better out there. Especially again, if it's a negative place, or if you're being worked too hard, or whatever the case may be. Know your worth. You have, especially if you're a hard worker and you're a hard worker. Know your worth for that. You can always do better, and the company, wherever you are, should show you in whatever way, whether it's monetary, whether it's people thanking you, whether it's just any sort of extra bonuses or whatever, they should show you your worth. Even if it's something as minor as a supervisor coming over and saying, hey, you're doing a really good job. I try to do that at CIB, and not just like... not just because I have to, but because I want to. If someone's doing really good at whatever, or if I notice that they've, did a section really good, or they were like really good that week or whatever, I try to tell them, because it's one of those things where people like to hear it. It's just, it's natural. So number 3, and this is another thing I really, really see when I go on the subreddits, is never put the company over your personal well-being. I've read so many stories of people who are like I said, can't sleep, started drinking, can only think about the job, dream about the job, like nightmares about the job. Like even when they're sleeping, they're having nightmares about this job. Now, jobs are jobs. And even there's technically no such thing as a dream job, because a job is a job. It's a job. Even an NFL head coach, which is something that, people would relatively kill for, is a job, because it is so many hours, it's so much time, you don't have that much time off, you have lots of BS paperwork, you have lots of dealing with employees, the players and whatever. A job is a job, and it will always have, it will never be, paradise or whatever, because it's a job that, you will have your ups and downs and everything. But if you get to the point where, whatever you're doing, is just affecting your well-being to the point where you can't function on a day-to-day, then something's wrong. Then something's wrong with they're working you too hard, or they're working you too much, or you're being asked too much. It's not worth it. Not to get all not to go off on a crazy tangent or whatever, but it's nice to work, but life is too short to be worked to the bone. You know what I mean? It's nice to have that good feeling from it, and you get self-worth from working and all that, but it's not there's always that gray area. Nothing is black and white, everything's gray. So if you are being worked too hard, or if whatever the reason is that your well-being is suffering, there's something wrong, and you have to look into it. If you talk to whoever it is that's above you, and they honestly care and they can work on that, that's awesome. If you talk to whomever up there, whether it's HR, a manager, whatever, and they simply don't care at all or don't do anything, and your well-being is still hurting, and they just, honest to God, don't care, you gotta look elsewhere. That's just, there has to be some care in there. There just does. No matter where you are, there has to be some care in there. And I know it's not easy to find, but it's something that, like, a job is a job. You can have many of them, but your personal well-being is one of the most important things for you. Number 4, don't let management or anyone above you guilt you into anything. If you can't be called in on a moment's notice on a day off because someone else called off, that's not your responsibility. It's not your problem, And I know that's an easy thing to say. We've all been there. Anyone who's done retail or whatever. And heck, there'll be times where one of my guys will be sick, or I'll be sick, or whatever the case may be, and I'll ask some of my guys, can you work, whatever day, and say it's that day or the next day, and they can't because they're busy. Is it lame because there's more work for myself or the people in store? Yeah, but it's not that big of a deal that you have to be like guilting the person. Oh, I can't believe you put your kids or your family ahead of where you work. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, do not let that happen, because if you let that happen, then a lot of these poor managers and poor just management in general will kind of almost hone in on that. Like, oh, I can just ask them to come in whenever they want, or whenever I want, now I'll start taking all these days off and have this person just be at my beck and will to come in whenever. You just can't, if that's not part of the job description. It's not part of the job description of anywhere, in retail at the very least, to be available at every beck and call. Like, that also goes with part 3, where it's, if you just know that the second you get a message or a call from a certain number that you're going to have to go and work in all day on your day off, like, that does not help your well-being. So if people are pushing you or anything like that, yeah, you have to seriously consider looking elsewhere. Number 5, if you feel you're being overworked, or I also put down originally underpaid, so overwork or underpaid, then you are. That's, again, there are so many jobs out there, especially in 2021. Everyone is hiring. Everyone's looking for people. And when I get at the store people who I consider good workers, which is pretty much everyone we have, I want to keep them, and I'll do what is necessary to do that, because it helps me, it helps the store in the long run when you have a good worker. So if one of them were to come to me and say, look, I'm overworked, I'm working too much. Yeah, it's tough, but we can work out a schedule, we can work something out. If you need whatever day off, it stinks, it is what it is, it's part of life, but you just deal with it. You can find a place out there that will not treat you that way. It's generally the same thing for all 7 of these. If you feel, honest to goodness, that you're being overworked, then you are. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Number 6, and this is a big one when it comes to retail. You're not letting anyone down for following any of the above steps we talked about. A lot of times, this won't even be specifically said or even implied, But a lot of times, especially if it's like a relatively smaller workplace, like, yeah, Walmart has like hundreds of employees, maybe a place that has like 20 employees, right? 10 employees, 5 employees, whatever. If you need to have a personal day off, if you can't come in at the beck and call of the manager or whatever, you're not letting the other people down. You're technically letting yourself down because you're not letting yourself do the stuff that makes you happy, let you work on your well-being, and that hurts yourself, which technically will hurt everyone else at the store when your work won't be quite as good. A lot of close-knit places, like in retail and food service and stuff like that, they will not want to call off if they're sick, or they'll have to come in because they know person A, person B, and person C are relying on you. You know what? It is what it is. Everyone in there, in a perfect world scenario, of course, are pulling their own weight, or at least pulling some of the weight. Even if you're like a manager or whatever, will there be times where that has to happen in catastrophic circumstances where you have to go in or whatever? Yeah, I have to work some of my days off, and it is what it is. But don't let it become a thing, and don't look at it like, oh, I can't ever have off or ever, take this time for myself because I'm letting the other people down, That is up to the management to have enough people there, enough going on that you're allowed to do that. And again, if you're at a place where it's kind of like that, and I notice this for GameStop a lot, not to pick on them because it's an easy target nowadays, but so these stores are given 70-ish hours to run the entire week. Now, in the past, managers at GameStop were salaried, so their hours didn't count against anything. So you could have the manager working however many hours, and then you have 70 extra hours. That's not the case anymore. Now it's 70, 80, however many hours, including the manager. So the manager is always going to get 40 because they're the manager, and then you have 30 other hours to divvy up between the assistant manager, if you have a third key manager, any of the other people there. And because of that, and because GameStop puts such stress on each of these employees by giving them so few hours, from what I understand, almost all the time they're working solo. That's a tough thing to do no matter where you work at, whether you're at a smoothie stand or whether you're at GameStop or wherever. So you're working by yourself. So if you get sick or if you get overworked or whatever, now you're letting the manager down because he has to work 50, 60 hours, whatever. This is not anything wrong with the people in there. This is a thing from above where you can just look at it and be like, this is not right. If this is what they're going to continue to do, it's not right for my well-being, for their well-being, for anyone's well-being. And in a situation like that, again, consider looking elsewhere. And number 7 is essentially the exact same thing. Consider if there's a bad situation that is honestly, earnestly affecting you to the point of, again, you can't sleep, you're super affected, you can't do anything you normally enjoy, you can't spend time with friends, and unless you're a brain surgeon and they're calling you in, and it is what it is, you make X amount of crazy dollars, whatever kind of thing, and there's literally lives on the line, then consider looking elsewhere. Know your worth. There are places out there that will be happy to have a good, hard worker. They are out there. Don't be afraid if you try some places and they don't end up working. You try a place and this isn't for me. They're really, the ownership does this, and this wrong. That's fine. It's almost like, I mentioned a marriage, it's almost like, in a weird way in 2021, the employees are almost like dating these businesses. Is this person right for me? And I'm sure everyone has been or will have been on a bad date at some point, and sometimes you just go, doesn't work, It doesn't mean that you have to get married to the person, and doesn't mean that you have to work at the same place that is... It's great to work at a single place for a long time if they're great for you and you're great for them and everyone's happy, not even counting money, not even counting whatever, but it's awful to be at a place for a super long time if you're just like, this is awful, I hate this. Again, a job will always be a job. There will always be some hard work, annoyance, whatever to it, but if it's too much for your well-being, you got to consider moving on there. So that's really all I have for you guys today. Like I said, if you want to check out all the different subreddits, essentially any subreddit for any business ends up being the employees going on there and using it as just a place to talk and to figure out if everything's going the same there. And a couple of the big ones are GameStop, Best Buy, Kroger is another big one where they have like lots of very interesting stories and all that. Target to an extent, but those were the big three. And I'm sure if you go to those three, you'll be like, directed to other ones. But like I said, this is just kind of a long-winded way of saying, like, know your worth. Everyone out there, especially nowadays when everyone's hiring, and companies are finally realizing they can't pay $7 an hour and make you work, at all times, have you come in for a 3-hour shift every day for $7 an hour. It's like, that's not going to fly anymore. And that's a great thing. That's a great thing for workers, and that's a great thing for well-run businesses, because it just, happier workers and happier people and happier everything just leads to, whether it's more, sales, or whether it's, better well-being for everyone, it's all a better thing. So there's so much out there right now. Everyone's hiring. It's just like I said, it's a great time to be out in the workforce as far as that's concerned. One last thing I wanted to do real quick, and this only involves me specifically. I can't guarantee this would work anywhere else, but what I look for in a potential employee, people oftentimes think that, like, what I would look for is someone with, like, an encyclopedic knowledge of, like, gaming and video games and all that kind of stuff, or someone that plays lots of games. Like, truth be told, I already have a pretty good knowledge of games and stuff, and I'm happy to, relay that upon other people. And I'm also happy for the things that I don't know for them to relay upon me. But it's not about that, at least as far as I'm concerned. If I had two people, the one person knows absolutely everything about games, but honestly their attitude isn't super great. I could tell that they might, end up being like a little bit lazy, or maybe ask them to do something and they like mouth back or whatever. And like I said, but they know everything about video games. And then I have, the other person who knows very, very little about games, but is eager to learn, and is clearly a hard worker, and is clearly eager to learn, positive attitude. I am always, 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 always going to pick that person. Again, this is specifically for me. You're not going to pick, going back to brain surgeon, you're not going to pick a brain surgeon that, like, I'd rather have the jerk brain surgeon that's amazing than the very nice guy who's never picked up a scalpel. So it's a different kind of thing. This is specifically for retail and stuff that you can kind of be taught and learn about. I think it can go to a lot of different things, whether it's becoming a plumber, or being a server or whatever. Like, just in general, having that better attitude really outweighs a lot of other stuff. It has, it's, in a perfect world, tons about games, and you also have a great attitude, but, a lot of times that doesn't happen. I'll find the right person, and I'm like, they know very little about games, but guess what? They'll be around them for 20, 30, 40 hours a week. They'll be around games. They'll be learning. They'll be absorbing whatever. Like, it doesn't matter necessarily that they know all about this, because, a customer will ask them, then they'll come talk to me, and then they'll kind of learn it for next time. Not a big deal. It's because they have that great attitude. Positive attitudes really are infectious, and that's, like I said, specifically what I look for. Again, not the end-all be-all, but the positive attitude really goes a long way, especially if a place is going to give you, like, an actual in-person interview and whatever. That positive, can-do attitude, and being honest, I've never once, and I never will, ask those, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what's your biggest weakness, or whatever. Like, if some place is using that BS and that's kind of what they are, maybe they're not the right place for you. If you're like, you'd rather have someone that's like, let's talk about what this is, let's talk about what this job entails, that would just be you can even get an idea of how that marriage would work out, even for something that early. But again, know your worth. Know that there's stuff out there. It's a great time to be in the workforce. Everyone's hiring, and if you're in a bad situation, again, I'm not. I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying leave today without a backup or whatever. But if you are a good, honest, hard worker, and a place isn't treating you correctly, you will find something. There will be some place looking for someone that's a really hard, good worker with a good attitude. Will always be the case. Always, always, always. So, thank you guys for watching. I think next time we'll probably be back to video game related stuff, but just after reading so much stuff on Reddit and seeing so many stories and watching so many YouTube videos, I just kind of wanted you to hear it straight from the horse's or camel's mouth. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and this has been Completing Cast episode 70. Have a great day.